Good afternoon. It is Sunday, the 6th of February. Welcome to the Team Bubba podcast. My name's Barry, and today we have Lazar.
Right, Baz.
Billy. Hey, boy.
Greetings, boys.
Hey, mate.
Billy.
Stevie can't be with us. I think he's working this weekend, so his shifts don't allow him to be on with us today, unfortunately. But it's becoming a bit of an event where normality, where there's one of us missing usually now. Just how it is. We're just gonna have a bit of a chinwag today. I think another one. Discuss what's been going on and what his thoughts are on things. If one of us wants to, is there anything you want to kick off with this week?
What do you reckon, Billy?
Oh, I've got loads to want to talk about today, boys. Where do you want to start?
What's the biggest news item at the moment today, Sunday the 6th? What is the biggest?
I think it's that online safety bill. That today. That for me, that's what threw me today.
Yeah.
Where they're on about changing the laws so that we aren't allowed to have freedom of speech, and if you go online and go against the agenda. So, for instance, if you believe that COVID doesn't exist or that vaccines don't work, they can, in theory, imprison you.
That's been in the pipeline a long time, hasn't it? Because Richie Allen constantly brings this up, and he claims if that or when that gets put through, that'll be the end of alt media. People like him, this podcast will just shut down. We'll be North Korea.
Well, they're classing it as domestic terrorism, aren't they? That's what they label it as, and that's, like you say, that's been around for going back a good few years. And I mean, even I think going back to 9/11, the ball was, but they got the ball rolling with all that, didn't they? You know, obviously when the war on terror thing started to happen, and that buzzword came about, they started riding on the back of that, didn't they?
They used the media, didn't they, to get the media pumped out all the misinformation, didn't they? And then the alt media twigged on what were going on and started to put their own information out there based on what they saw and what they thought, and all the information put together. And we all know it wasn't what they said it was. So I should be locked up next week. Because of that.
Well, like you say, fundamental human rights again being stripped. And what did they speak about? What did we say going back early doors when all this bullshit started this last couple of years? And we were saying about if you start taking the arm spears and you're not fully organic, they're going to start coming for your human rights. Yeah. People laughed, just like they did about, you know, all the other things we've told them that are now happening. I mean, if we were to tell people now, you know, if you've had 3 arm spears and someone knocks on your door and says you're only 76% organic, sir, you've now given up your fundamental human rights because you're not fully human, and it was done by consent. Come with us, get in the van. I mean, if we were to say that to someone now, even after all this, what's happening, most people would just ignore it and think you were fucking crazy again, wouldn't they? It'd be the same attitude.
Yeah.
You know, like we've said to them for years and years before this pandemic started, it's going to be on your doorstep one day, because, you know, you always get that generic answer, don't you? Well, you know, what can you do about it? You know, why'd you bother? And it's, well, because it might only be happening in the Middle East right now, or in Africa, or wherever on the other side of the world. But soon enough, that totalitarian tiptoe is going to be on your doorstep before you know it. And who are you going to, you know, what are you going to do about it then? And it's always that, oh, we'll worry about it when it happens type bullshit. Well,
I love that phrase you used while we were offline. We were chatting just before we came on, where you said it's that kicking the can down the street.
Yeah.
Ideology where it won't happen to me. It's just, let's just get on with it and let's just roll up our sleeves and go along with what they're saying, because we don't want to kill Granny and we don't want to die, when it's all been proved that That's not the case.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, what more do people need right now? And that's where I think obviously a lot of them are just completely switched off. You know, there's a certain percentage of humanity that we know we're never going to get. You've got to just let them be what they are. And then obviously you're going into the Georgia Guidestones thing again, aren't you? The depopulation, is that obviously, it might sound heartless, but looking at it from a 10,000 foot overview of things, is that going to be a better thing for humanity going forward? I know it's a controversial thing to say, but the more and more things are happening, I think we could all kind of agree that there's a hell of a lot of people on this planet that don't contribute anything. And, you know, overall, in the long term, is that going to be a beneficial thing for everybody, for these people who are just, like I say, not contributing anything and don't care about anything apart from themselves? If they're not here no more, is that going to be necessarily a bad thing?
I remember right at the beginning of the lockdowns when I was going out and about shopping and what have you. And I remember at the time saying, I tell you what, if it is depopulation is the thing, bring it on. This is brilliant. I can go everywhere, wherever I want. And it's fucking quiet. Superb.
Yeah. Mm.
No idiots on the road.
It's harsh realities of what's going on, isn't it? I mean, if we're just going to talk about it as it is, I mean, speaking personally, the more and more time goes on, and the more I watch people, which is what we've been doing anyway, haven't we? Way beyond all this started. We had a good idea on what other people were like, in percentages, if you want to look at it that way, or in groups of types of people. That's been probably the biggest education ever in my life this last couple of years, when I've started to. It really disappointed me, but I'm kind of over it now. I was quite naive in thinking that there was a lot more people out there that cared, that give a shit, that that had a bit more about them. But the longer it's gone on, it's been a massive education for me personally, in that I've realised that a massive chunk of people out there basically aren't worth a fucking carrot, and they're actually dangerous. We've spoke about this, haven't we? I know you talk about it quite a lot, Larry, how dangerous these people are to other people with their ignorance and the self-serving attitudes.
Oh yeah, I mean, when they brought the mask mandate in July last year, that was the point I knew that they would take us over the cliff.
Yeah.
That was the moment I knew for certain these people would take us to the edge of the cliff, and they'd jump off it and they'd want to take us over with them. Mm. And that was going to be a massive fight to stop that happening. And that's what's happened. They have gone along with all this, and they've tried to pull us along with them by what's the word? Virtue signaling us into having the dart, try to make us feel guilty, try to blame us for the spread, blah blah blah. And some people have fell for it, and they are getting it out of the sheer pressure of these people. And when you look at it like that, they are dangerous.
When you look at it from a point of view of karma, because obviously that's something that I definitely believe in. It's definitely a thing. Like I say, we've been trying to tell people for years, and we always kind of knew that there was going to come a point where these people would have to die on their own sword, based on their own choices and stuff like that. And we've had to, we've suffered a lot through it, like a lot of people who are aware and awake. But, there comes a time when you've just got to step back and say, well, you've got to let the universe do its job here. These people have had enough time, enough things put in the face, to the point where other people around them are suffering really badly, and they're still choosing to ignore it. Who are we to kind of, and there's a free will element to it as well. I've always been aware of that. People have free will. Don't overstep the mark with people's own free will. Let them make their own choices. You can't force them to do things. But at the end of the day, if they're going to go down that path, do you remember the analogy we made? And we were talking about this, and we come up with the analogy of all of us people who are aware. You imagine us all stood along a riverbank. I think we spoke about this going back about 12 months ago. And we're stood on the riverbank, and we know that on this sleepy river, this lovely, warm, clear water, a couple of miles down the river, it becomes huge rapids, and they're going to go over a cliff to the death. And we're all stood on the side, and they're all in the water with all the government saying, come on, come in, the water's lovely. And they're all swimming around, floating down river slowly. And we're saying, get out the fucking water. It's dangerous. They're leading you to your death. And they're just going, come on, it's nice, it's lovely. What do you do? Do you jump in and try and pull them out yourself and risk your own death? Or do you just stand back and say, well, told you. What more could we do? You've got to stand back, haven't you?
We've got to. I mean, that's all right, a bit different with kids, but nobody can say they didn't know. I'm sorry, all this about informed consent. Yes, legally, nobody's been has been legally informed, so they couldn't possibly give a legal informed consent. But everybody knows a crazy, don't they? And that crazy's been banging on about this, that, the other, putting, the alternative view across. So nobody can say, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Because everybody knew that. So I think
unless you've been living in
point where that we just got to leave them to it. You say, it's free will. They want to have it, go right ahead. Knock yourself out.
Not only that,
don't include me.
Yeah, exactly. Our experience tells us, sorry, mate. Our experience tells us, going back all these years of trying to tell people about what's going on in the world, and it tells us, the harder you try and push these people, and if you try and step into their bubble and tell them and burst their bubble, 9 times out of 10, it's going to send you backwards. It's going to make it even more difficult for them to realise. You've got to let them do it in their own time. Yeah. And that's what's been so disappointing for me personally, is to see so many people who are quite clearly never ever gonna, for whatever reason, they're never going to admit either to themselves or anybody else, and they literally will. They'd rather go off that cliff than try and turn, be honest with themselves.
Yeah, they've been busy throwing themselves off a cliff, and as they're falling, they're screaming back at us to jump with them. Yeah. And then they're also encouraging others to push us over the edge,
to pull us over with them. Yeah.
It seems to me it's just how people are these days. It's just, I don't know. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth. That people are not compassionate anymore, and they've lost the ability to think. And everything's put in front of them, and everybody's got their head buried in the phones and the laptops and the TVs, and they're just guided by other people. They don't think about how they want to live their life. They are just told, and they believe everything they're told as well, and that's probably the most frustrating thing, because I think we're knocking on maybe 2 years, just over 2 years, since I've watched a news program on mainstream media. I realised that it was an absolute shit show, and everybody who was watching it was just transfixed, absolutely transfixed, and that's all they talked about. It's like when you're at work, or when you're talking to other people, say, "Oh, did you watch Coronation Street last night?" And I'm like, "No." What do you mean? No, don't you watch that? Do you watch EastEnders then? No. What do you watch then? I don't watch any of that shit. And I haven't watched a soap for probably 8 years, 9 years, maybe longer. But people, I know people at work who go home, they have the tea, and then they sit and they watch Emmerdale, Coronation Street, EastEnders, and then they'll settle in and watch some news, and then they'll go to bed, and that's it. And then all they do is talk about the next day. They talk about the soaps and what's been on the news. and that's it. There's no constructive conversations anymore. People are just guided. Like, it's not being guided, is it? It's more like they're being forced through their life. Go to work, earn your money, go on holiday, do as you're told. And
to be fair, Baz, I did used to rush them from work and catch up with neighbours when Kylie was in it.
Weren't you about 10?
I was partial to a bit of Kylie.
No, I wasn't. I was about 16, 17 then.
Oh yeah, I forget you're younger than me, aren't you?
No, I was more of a plain. I was more of a plain Jane super brain myself. Do you remember her?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember?
We've hardly got any listeners as it is. We're going to start losing them. They're going to start switching off like fuck here if we carry on talking about neighbours.
Oh yeah, and then switch over to Home and Away at 6 o'clock.
But did you know Channel 5 have dropped Home and Away? Or Neighbours? They've dropped one of them, haven't they? I heard that today.
I don't know. No idea.
Mental. But yeah, it's such a shame the way the world's gone. They say technology is a fantastic thing. I mean, you all know I use technology daily, and I think it's an amazing thing. But there are times when you've got to kick off, you've got to switch off, you've got to not do it. And luckily, I don't get entrapped into the whole mainstream media side of it. So I don't spend all my time looking on mainstream news websites and the like. But you do have to keep up to date, I guess, on what's going on. Otherwise, you won't know what a shit show it all is.
And it's important, obviously. We only when I dip my toe in all that, it's more obviously it's not for the reasons that most people do it. Obviously, we're all the same. We look at it just to see what bullshit's being spilled, because it does tell its own story in its own way, doesn't it? It gives pointers to where we are on that side of the fence, which is valuable. I mean, I'm seeing a lot when I do watch it. Seeing a lot of backpedaling on the news now and on these, like your Good Morning Britons and stuff like that, which were 110% behind the establishment. And now, over the last few weeks since Boris made that announcement, it was just so clear to me, so evident how much they'd spun it, a complete 180. To hear people like Hillary Jones and people like that trying to backpedal, it's so telling, like, and it's a good tool to use that way, isn't it? But too many people watch it, and obviously I don't have the knowledge that we have to know that it's all brainwashing, ain't it? And it all comes from the central networks. It's the same script that gets put out all around the world.
I have a theory, boys.
Well,
I had, how I get these feelings about what's coming. Yeah, I share them with you. Well, I had something come to me on Friday. I thought I'm going to save it for the podcast. I'm not going to say anything because I'm not always right, but a lot of the time
tend to be right more than not, though, mate. I'll hand you that.
Yeah,
you do.
I think we've sort of touched on it, but I just had this come to me because we're seeing that, like you say, they're starting to backpedal, but they're always protecting themselves, aren't they? They're always like saying this has changed, but it's not our fault. It's not our fault it's changed. They're always got an excuse for it, right? Now, here's what come to me on Friday. What if, right? And at first you'll think, nah. But when I tell you why that I think they might do it, then you might think, oh, yeah, he's got a point there. What if they really do a full 180 and literally come out and admit everything has been a lie to get you to take the dart? Right? Now you think, why would they do that? Because they'll be hanging themselves. Yeah, people would be literally having a rope put around the neck. But they're not the ones in control, are they? The people at the very top will get off seeing them people suffer just as much as they see the little man suffer, right? So can you imagine what would happen if all these millions of people suddenly realised, you know, they've taken something that could, I'm not going to say it because I don't want to, you know, this is going out on YouTube, so I don't want to be accused of this, that, and the other. But, you know, I don't need to say it. So can you imagine the panic that will set in, the negative energy that will cause? And these people love swimming around in negative energy. Can you see? Can you see what I'm getting at? They could just turn around and say, we have messed up big time here. We rushed into it. We never done human trials. We never done long-term trials, and now it's all gone totally wrong. And we dread what's coming. There's nothing we can do about it. It's done now. And basically pull the ladder up, Jack, and let us all get on with it. Can you imagine the panic and the fear and the worry that's got to cause people? And that's all that negative energy. And they'll love that. They will absolutely love it because they've been swimming around in that the last 2 years, causing, you know, the fear of the Kung flu. Now they're going to flip it round. I can really see them doing it. Well, I really can.
Do you know what? That does make a lot of sense to me for different reasons, actually. Yeah, I can see I can see where you're coming from with that. There's something else that ties into this that I wanted to bring up, so I might as well mention it now. It's been playing on my mind for the last few weeks. When you look at all these leaders that have been placed in for this particular time, we know, don't we, that obviously that's how it works. You know, if you think that people are elected and stuff like that, you know, you've got a bit of homework to do. When you look around and you've got the likes of Creepy Joe, Bojo, you've got old Funky Socks Trudeau, you've got Lord Farquhar, Macron, Horseface, Ardern, the nasty headmaster Dan Andrews. If you go around and look at all the different leaders that have been placed in for this particular time, they're all obvious cretins, aren't they? And I don't think you could have got any more power-hungry entities, I'd rather call them, to be placed into these roles for this particular time. If you tried, could you? I don't, you know, it's glaringly obvious that they're all power-mad crazies, aren't they? I know in the past they have been. They're always that type. But it just seems to me like just for these times, there's been an extra idiot put in place all over the world. And I just wonder, I've been wondering whether obviously that's been done intentionally and they've put all these idiots in.
100%.
With the idea,
totally
you know,
agree.
with the idea of bringing in, because obviously a lot of people are forgetting about, you know, this big part of all what they've had planned for a long, long time has been a one world government, hasn't it? And, you know, is that what they've been trying to engineer here? Are they trying to engineer a situation where, like Larry says, they can just turn around and say, we'll hold our hands up. All these fucking idiots made this happen. Because they're the ones going to get the blame. Hardly anyone realises that there's levels that go way beyond these puppets that are placed, you know, in public view. So they know they're sitting pretty in their castles and wherever they are, in bunkers or whatever, saying, well, they're all going to get thrown under the bus. So let's place some extra, you know, because these type of people, these are the ones where I think the elite controllers, the ones further up the ladder, they'd be more than happy to throw them to the wolves because they're not going to be any good to them anyway, because they're the type of people that would just do anything to suit themselves. You know, they've just been given a bit of power and they just will not let go of it. And it's just kind of lingering on my shoulder all the time. That is this where we're going with this? Are they going to try and push this one world government and say, you know, it's all gone wrong. People have had too much power at local levels. They're all corrupted. So we want to put all this back into one entity, one world government.
Do you think this Agenda 30 and Agenda 21 and all that one world government is a definite? Do you know? I'm not convinced by it. I'm not.
Yeah, I think when you look back in history, they've tried to do it before. They have tried to do it before, and they've not been successful. But I think Billy's right. I think for probably a decade, well, no, it's probably even 20 years. They've been bringing people up, bringing people through.
Oh yeah,
their
I agree
system.
with that bit.
It's like Boris. Boris was made for this. He was born for this, wasn't he? Because he was this fucking buffoon, this half-wit that bumbled around everywhere. And then all of a sudden he was mayor of London. And you think, at the time, I'm thinking, oh no, he's going to end up being prime minister. You just know.
You could see it, couldn't you?
And it's like in America. It looks as if, and can we say that it looks like they've rigged the votes to get the Democrats in?
Yeah, 100%.
In America.
It's misinformation.
So, yeah, exactly. So they did
that, man.
because they're part of it. Yeah, allegedly. So if they did that to get the Democrats in, because they're the ones, once you've got these people in power, they can do what they want. They will do as they're told by the people above them. And it's all right putting things through Parliament, but when you're paying off people to support that agenda, everything just becomes easy. And this is why I think the people do need to get up. They do need to stand up. They do need to join forces. Even those people that have had the jobs, even those people that believed it and are now slightly doubting it, we don't care whether you suddenly join us. And you're feeling a bit silly. You don't feel silly about anything. Don't feel stupid about anything. We need all to come together to be able to defeat this law. Because if we don't, they'll just put things through and you'll not see them. It's like this Human Rights Act that they're trying to change, where the UK human rights will come before your international human rights. Now, the international human rights was formed after World War I, after World War II, after all the atrocities that supposedly happened or did happen and will happen again in another war. To stop that from happening, you were given, or it was made clear to governments of the world that everybody had inalienable rights: the right to private life, the right to bodily autonomy. But now they're trying to change it in the UK, but they've not announced it. They've not gone on television. They've not done a special show to say, right, this is what we're going to do. We're wanting to put this through. We'd like people to make, their views. And here's a website. If you go to this website, you can input your information, your details as to what you think, in your opinion, as to whether we should or whether we shouldn't. They haven't done that. All of a sudden, you'll see something online that says, have you seen this? This goes through. We've got until the 8th of March to do something about this. Otherwise, it's just going to go through. And that's what they're trying to do at the minute. And people go, they won't do that. They won't do that. And these are the same people, when we said right at the beginning that they've engineered this, the whole arm spear, dart spear, whatever it is, to their agenda. And we were told at the time they wouldn't do that. But because we're aware of what's gone on over the years, they wouldn't engineer a building collapsing. But they wouldn't do this. They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't engineer out the World War. They just wouldn't. But they have done, and they have done in the past before on numerous occasions. But yet these people tend to trust. They don't trust you, but you don't know anything. But they trust the people on the television and the people in government, and that's the problem.
Yeah, that's so-called authority. That so-called authority, innit?
It's exasperating, isn't it? It's so disheartening watching these people do what they're doing without even looking into it.
Well, like we were talking about before we started, Baz, when we touched on this. When you think about it, most people, like if you want to call them the sheeple, normies, whatever your term is, they don't even realise that they've got human rights. They're that buried in their own little personal life, and they don't have any thought for other people and things anything larger than themselves. So they don't even consider the fact that, you know, they have been given by, you know, through their ancestors fighting for things and good people putting things in place for this, you know, for these times, that they have actually got God-given rights that supersede anything that any prick wants to tell you. They don't even realise that is a thing. And even now, after the last couple of years of you know, being able to, because of all this, what's happened, being able to tell people and actually get into a conversation with them about exemptions and human rights and basic rights, they still don't even want to take it on board. Did he? So, you know,
nobody sees
lack of knowledge.
It's like for the House of Lords and the peerages, that was all set up because it was people with money, historical money, that were put into those places in there, because the reason behind it all was they're not corruptible, because nobody can buy them, because they don't need buying, because they've already got money that's been handed down for generations. Whether you like the class system or not, that's why they were put in place. But for decades, the politicians are trying to strip that back. They're trying to put their own people in. They're giving peerages away. They're making lords of people who are on their side, so that when things do go to vote in the House of Lords, they've got a box ticked by one of their supporters or one of their friends. And
I think
this has been going on for decades.
It has a long, long time. And I think it's safe to say that up to now, by now, they've basically got all of that well and truly sewn up. And I think that's one of the things that's given them the confidence to attempt to do what they've actually done. On such a large scale around the world, because they've tried all these little templates, haven't they? You know, these behavioural scientists around the world, all these people whose job it is to actually keep tabs on this and read the people. You know, they've actually got to a stage where they've become so confident when they have the yearly meeting, you know, whatever they did, wherever they're going to have it this year, and they all sit down, as we know, every year, and they'll meet up in a secret location and they'll discuss, where are we with the people? You know, what can we push now? And I think they've got to a stage now. I don't know if it's desperation or if this is just another step in the plans. Everything's telling me it's desperation, to be honest with you, from my own personal opinion. But how is that the case? Have they got to a point now where they've said these people are now so dumbed down and such idiots in such great numbers that we can literally do whatever we want to them?
What if all this stuff, like you were just talking about, Gender 21, all that, what if all that is just plate spinning? Got all these plates spinning, but their only goal was one thing: reducing the human population. And once they achieved that, why wouldn't they go back to a world what we've always had, where humans have sort of been free, like especially in the Western world? We've sort of been free, haven't we? We ain't been completely free when you're underneath a government, but do you know what I mean? What's stopping them going back to that, just with smaller numbers? And then literally that is the reset. That's that is the real reset. And everything else has been put out there to keep everyone distracted, going down side streets and keeping people's minds busy while they get on with what they really wanted to do. And now they've done it. Now they're going to possibly take us, you know, everything will unfold what I just said a little while ago. They'll deal with all that, and then they'll be left with less human numbers, and then to perhaps get themselves out of this. And I think you've said this, Billy, in the past. They'll then have to butter us up, basically.
Yep, they'll have to give us something.
Yeah, they'll give us something back, and because we've been through so much crap the last few years, and some of us longer, knowing what's going on, we'll just take it because we're just relieved to just get out of all this shit, basically. And whatever they got to offer us, we'll probably take it. because we know that'll see our lives out, because they'll probably wouldn't need to do this again for another 100 years or more.
When you take into
do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if this is what this is about. I'm wondering if they're now got what they wanted. They know what they've done, and they might be sitting there very satisfied with themselves that they've got so many people to fall for it. And now it's all a case of just now coming back out of it and then negotiating, because the world is definitely going to change no matter what way you look at it. It's not going to go back to how it was before. And that I can just see this could all just be about numbers, just human population.
Yeah. When you look at it in terms of this being a world war, like a World War III or IV, whatever you want to call it, because obviously a lot of people overlook the Cold War, and I think that was probably World War III. But anyway, if you're looking at it as in terms of a world war, and if you look back in modern history anyway, and I think we all think quite sure that this goes back way beyond that, that they've always run templates. They've always got like a blueprint that they'll stick to, like a winning template that they use. So what they tend to, if you look back in modern history and you look at World War One, Two, and now this one, what they've always tended to do is, if you look at it in terms of cycles, they'll have the war, you'll get rid of all those numbers, and then for a 10-20 year period after that, the people are then buttered up. You know, if you look at like the Roaring '20s and that, there was a long period there, and then after World War Two, going into the 50s and the 60s, obviously the 60s was, you know, they pushed out the, you know, the love and the hippie movement and all that kind of stuff. They always tend to do that, and also on top of that, they always give humanity something huge. Like the internet came around in the 90s, wasn't it? I think we're kind of due something massive. You know, if you look back in time, as they've given us like technologies that'll kind of keep us sweet. Also, when you factor in the fact of how many people are going to die, and then that's going to free up so much money, and the economy and stuff in a certain way for them. That's why they went after all the, you know, the old people. God love them, early doors, which we noticed straight away, didn't we, when it started happening? That is going to free up a massive chunk of the pot for them to then give it back to the people.
Well,
just to keep them,
to be fair, that pot has gone, hasn't it? They've had it. That's gone.
Well, the money, obviously, the monetary system.
Yeah, all the pension money's gone, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's gone. That's why
you've got to find it somewhere.
They've taken the money away from us, haven't they? At the end of the day,
it's gone. No,
I mean, we know the fiat financial system's an absolute load of bollocks. We know that it's it's based on lies and nothing.
Went over the cliff 20 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. But you know, for them to say there's no money, it's a load of shit, because they can just produce money whenever they need to, whenever they want to. They can just reprint some money, and
quantitative easing, ain't it?
Yeah.
They call it.
People to think that you know, we're broke and that we need to give more money. Why should we be giving more money? Why? They just reprint some more, just like they did do when this shit show happened. They reprinted money, gave it to all the friends to do all the masks and the likes. But yet they're just still taking from us, and it's all engineered. It's all engineered. The fuel crisis that's coming on at the minute, where your gas and electric bills going to double. Yeah, that's engineered. That's engineered.
Yeah.
And it just means that we can't do anything. We won't have any money, and it does feed that, like you've said, bad energy.
Yeah.
I really can't get my head around how people can't see. Like I use this a lot, like in real life, talking to people and try to get them to understand what the hell's going on. The track and trace app, right? So this is UK track and trace app. That's cost the British taxpayer £37 billion. That's 37,000 million pounds. right?
Someone should be tracking, tracing where that fucking money's gone.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So that was developed by June 2020. So in 2 months, they had that up and running. All right, it weren't running smoothly. They had that up and running. Now, how much does it cost to build a hospital? Huh? I have no idea, but I would imagine £1 billion. You could probably build a massive city hospital for £1 billion, couldn't you? Now, if someone said to them, right, that hospital's cost us £1 billion, please show us where that money's gone. You can say, right, well, we needed 45 million bricks, we needed 10 million blocks, we needed 50,000 tons of sand, we needed 1 million man-hours. You could just have list with all the numbers beside each one, and you could say that's where the £1 billion has gone. Right. Yep. Now, if I was to say to you, track and trace that 37 billion, where's that gone? How the hell have you arrived to that number?
Justify that. Because in any business, you have to justify everything, don't you?
I mean, you're
a QS, quantity surveyor, isn't that?
You're a bit techie, Baz. What does it take to develop an app? A few whiz kids? I mean, they've done it in 2 months.
That are set up for this, aren't there? There are companies set up for this. They do know what they're doing. They're handling data, but not very successfully as well. Not very successfully as well. I don't understand. I've never decided. I've looked at it, but I didn't decide to go in. I decided not to look into it too deeply about how to create an app. But
what
it ain't as difficult. There's no way. If I knew that 37 billion, if I created an app, I could get 37 billion. I tell you what, I would learn to make sure that I could create an app.
That's what I'm saying.
And so it'd take me 37 billion for it.
Trouble is, though, Baz, you don't work for Vanguard or BlackRock, do you?
No, that's it. That's it.
What physical materials would you need to develop an app? What we say? Oh, we're going to need to buy, this. We're going to need to buy that so that some of that 37 billion's gone. What?
Yeah, but it wouldn't be that amount. You'd need some servers to store the data on.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
You need people to look after the servers, but that happens on a day-to-day basis. There's no way that contract was. How long was that contract for? Was it 2 or 3 years for that app? And they spent 37 billion on it. So what happens after that time?
This is what I'm saying to people. They just can't get their head around. That money's gone somewhere, and our grandkids have got to be paying that off for the rest of their lives. Grandkids, our great grandkids will probably be paying that off. That number.
Yeah. What it is. Most people have got a small.
Don't get it.
You know what it is, Larry? Most people have got a small town mentality, and I see it more and more nowadays. It's become more and more apparent to me than it ever did. You've got people talking about, I'm going to vote in, I don't know, Keir Starmer because he was talking about fucking getting our road tarmacked. That type of attitude. That's as far as most people can look, because it's just a pure lack of knowledge. That's become more clear to me over the last couple of years than anything, and I have to remind myself constantly. I'm sure you do this, because we've come such a long way in our learning process. I remember the day in 2007 when I sat down and really started to dig, and the world started to open up to me. You've got to start somewhere, haven't you? But I think because we've come so far in our self-education that we forget, it's quite easy to forget just how uneducated or wrongly educated people are out there. And I have to constantly remind myself of that, when I get frustrated with people and I can't, it's just like you're banging your head against a brick wall. That's the one thing I keep reminding myself of. I have to pull myself back and say, where were you in 2006? Before I actually started putting pieces of the jigsaw together. People have literally got a blank board. They haven't even begun to put the first jigsaw piece in place on 1,000-piece board.
They haven't even opened the fucking box, mate.
You know what I mean, mate? They haven't even bought the fucker, have they? They haven't even decided to buy it yet. So, and I think that's where we all struggle sometimes, because it's so easy. You kind of, you judge people, according to yourself, don't you? You put them on the same level as yourself. But you have to remind yourself, and it's becoming more and more clear to me, just how uneducated people are, and how blind they are, you know, and it's a choice. It is a choice. Everyone's got that option to
feeling
start looking.
It's not about thinking that you feel that you're better than them either, is it? It's
no, not
it's
at
a case
all.
of if they opened their eyes, they'd see what we see.
Well, I'm sure we've all lost loads of people that we know. I wouldn't call them friends.
Yeah, we have.
Over the years, you know, we put ourselves out there. It's quite a brave thing to do when you're honest about it. I've been well conscious of it for years, that all kinds of people that I've had in my life have just gone well to the wayside. Now they've probably blocked me on social media, and I'm just a distant memory to them now. Because for that one reason, because that's what we've been trying to do all these years against the grain, is to try and put things out there actively, to help people along. And I'm sure on the other side of the coin, there's probably tons and tons of people that we don't even realise that we've actually helped. We've planted seeds on years ago, and they've got themselves right down the road now, and you know a lot of this. Whether they realise that it was down to us helping them along, and obviously it happened to us at some point. There was probably people who were well ahead of us on the journey, who would drop little things into us, little golden nuggets that have caused us to go off and check it. But it's so
family members, isn't it? Family members are the same. Personally, I've had my brother. He dropped me. He's just a little bit older than me. He dropped me years ago, for one reason or another. And then when my dad died last year, and I went to the funeral, I've not seen him. I think I'd seen him twice in the space of probably 20 years, maybe 3 times in the space of 20 years. And 2 of those times were when my dad was ill. And that was the only time that we came together. And at the funeral, I'd not seen him, and he's my brother. We used to be really, really close. So I was a bit devastated when he sort of cut ties with me, which is part of the reason why when I met my wife, I moved to Barnsley, just because there was nothing there for me anymore in Halifax. There was just nothing. So when he did that, I was gutted. I cut up for a long time. But then when I saw him, you know, you sort of, there's that familiarity there, and you see him, and I just wanted to bloody give him a great big brotherly
arms
hug.
around him,
yeah. And I went towards him, and as I went towards him, he offered me his fucking elbow and said, "I'm not catching anything from anybody, pal." And I couldn't believe it. I was that shocked. I actually touched my elbow with his, and then I was absolutely disgusted with myself then. And from that day onwards, the way that the day went on the funeral, as funerals go, it was okay. It was okay, but I made contact a couple of times with him afterwards, and again, he's just not bothered with me, and I think it's because of this. I think this is mainly because of this, and I thought I made a conscious decision. Fuck him. I'm done. I'm not even going to attempt to contact him anymore. He's gone. He's gone. He's gone out of my life now, as far as I'm concerned.
Do you know what, Baz? I think in a way though, it's been what's the word I'm looking for? It's been actually quite good for us and positive in the sense that for years and years we were living in like a kind of purgatory with these people, you know, and you know what I mean?
And they justify your views all the time.
Yeah, and having to kind of, I don't know, wear a mask as well sometimes in certain like social settings and stuff like that. Whereas this has kind of dragged it all to the fore for me, and I feel like I've been in practice for this for quite a long time. Kind of just shutting myself off from society to a degree just to protect my own sanity. But it's got to a point where it's all been brought right to the surface now, where it can't be ignored anymore, and it's kind of enabled us to be able to move on and draw a line under it, because I think we were all naive in thinking that a lot of these people were going to wake up on something like this happened. I remember when it first kicked off, we were all like, I remember saying to you lads, I'm going to give people 12 months. They're getting 12 months grace now because it's so clear, but obviously it's probably going to take them a bit more time to like transition out of, you know, this sleep that they've been in, this coma that they've been in. And it never happened. And then I was able to just say, okay, fuck yous. I've done enough now. My conscience is clear. I know deep down that I've done everything I can to try and help you along the way. Enough's enough.
Shall we go down the rabbit hole deep now?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go on and touch on a subject here, because I don't think we ever really talk about this. I can't think we have, privately. Organic souls. Is this why some people are not waking up? I mean, what do we think about that?
I do think that. I do. I think it's
some people got organic souls and others just like I don't know, synthetic. Whatever you want to call them.
And this ties into the whole depopulation thing as well, Larry. I do think that's a thing, because in my mind now, I do think. I'm not sure on it. It's just more of a hunch, picking up from different things. I think there's too many bodies for souls on this planet, and that has got a lot to do with the depopulation aspect.
Or here's another option, because I'm not convinced by there being synthetics. I'm not convinced by that. I think if you got a soul, it's a real one. Maybe that we're just different levels. Maybe with the people who are woken up, maybe we've lived this human life 50, 100, thousands of times before. And the ones who are dragging their heels and just not getting it, maybe they're like newborns. Maybe this might be the first, second, third, under 10. So they're like very well, I can't think the word, but do you know what I mean? They're not getting it because they haven't got the experience of recognizing whatever it is to wake up, basically.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you think I'm not? I don't really believe that there's such a thing as a synthetic soul. I'm not having that. I'm not having that.
No, I don't believe that anymore. There was a time when I was probably entertaining the idea, but no, personally, I don't really believe that. I'm more aligned with what you're saying, Larry. I think if you look at all the old texts, a lot of the old Gnostic texts and stuff like that, all the better ones the ones that I align and resonate with, tend to be more along the lines of reincarnation and, like you say, levels of evolving. Like, I mean, you could even be you could be an animal, couldn't you? Depending on what you do in this life, and then you move backwards and forwards based on your own choices.
I was just going to say, what if some of these people who are buried into the phones and watching the soaps and believing everything they're told, what if they were slugs before?
Yeah,
they didn't think.
What a rock! Yeah. I mean, and I do really. That's one thing that I am more and more believing these days, because you're seeing it with your own eyes. There's something in people, or there's something absent from people, should I say?
It's definitely night and day now, isn't it? You can.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't really need to say too much to someone. You just know if someone's got it or they ain't. You just can tell. It's weird. It's really weird. It's like you were saying. This has brought it all to the surface. We can clearly see who's switched on and who isn't. And it's are the ones switched on, like, been here, their old souls have been there, lived this human existence over and over and over, maybe lived other existences elsewhere, and the ones who are dragging the heels, maybe they're like the children. They got very like young souls. They're still developing. And maybe when you look at it like that, perhaps we shouldn't be quite so hard on them, because I know it's hard, it's frustrating, because they are causing, because they can't see it, they're helping this along. But when you look at it like that, maybe we shouldn't be quite so hard on them, and maybe we should really step away from it and just let them live their life, and then they'll, they've got to go through loads of cycles to get to where we are, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do look at people like that. That's like my natural way now. I've been kind of doing that for quite a long time. I try not to judge them in that way, because I do bear that in mind. What we're talking about, it's definitely a thing that I try and employ in my day-to-day life. Because if you didn't do that, I think you could it could really send you off spiraling. You know, it could send you down a really nasty, bitter road. And I think it's a good, healthy way of looking at it, you know, that we are all on different soul levels. And it just helps you, gives you a bit more patience, if you like. And also, it teaches you not to really be too hung up in what other people are doing. And it kind of brings home the importance of, you know, this is your big shot type of thing. It's not a practice run. You know, and what you do in this life echoes in eternity. You know, that's a saying that I've heard. And it makes it more of an individual process rather than seeing yourself as being part of the all. It gives you more of a impetus to make the most of what you're doing in your own life. Because I think a lot of people who are on the truth path kind of get caught up in all that, and they could lose 20. I mean, we've been doing this now for say a good 15 years, say, just for argument's sake, and we have had to sacrifice a hell of a lot of ourselves and our own day-to-day living and enjoyment because of it. And if you were to carry on doing it for another 20 years, thinking that everyone in the world was going to wake up in this great awakening, life could pass you by. You know? And that's where kind of where I feel like I'm coming to in my life at the moment. I feel like I'm coming into a stage where I'm at that point where I'm thinking, okay, I've given a lot now. Do I really want to keep doing it, or is it going to start taking from me when I don't really need to be doing that? You know, it's on somebody else who's like at the level I would have been at 15 years ago, and there's a hell of a lot of them coming through. And I think, okay, well, here's the baton. And, you know, it's coming to the point where I just feel like I'm beginning to pass the baton on a little bit. I don't know how you feel.
Well, you boys will remember this number. I can't remember it exactly, but they used to talk about there was a number of organic souls put down on this planet to try and put everything right. What was that number? Was that something like 150,000? Can you remember? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Of numbers, I do. Yeah, I think it was a very low number. You know,
it was. But what my point is now is that's not right, is it? There's a hell of a lot more than that. There's millions of us.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying about
there is millions of
seeds.
But I kept hearing a number over and over, and I'm sure it was 100. It was in 100 and something thousand. I think it was 150,000. Apparently, organic souls been sent here to do a job. Blah 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 blah. Whether that's all bollocks, I don't know. But if whatever, that number's not souls. That number's not right.
Maybe
there's a lot
souls,
more than that.
Well, yeah. I mean, if we were to look back at say 15 years ago, say if you went back to like 2005, 6, 7, around that time, when the time me personally when I started to get on the path. I remember looking around on all the sites that were on then, and given obviously the internet was nowhere near as big as it is now, but it was roaring back then. I remember going on a lot of YouTube videos and stuff and conspiracy theory stuff sites, and there was very little hits on them. It was, you know, you felt like you were probably in that 150,000 worldwide. That's the feeling I had at the time. I felt so lonely. But yeah, as it's gone on and on.
Yeah, that is sort of kind of what I was getting at. Before all this, the old media was quite a small place, really, weren't it? Yeah. I mean, you think the biggest icons out there, perhaps Alex Jones, David Icke, they probably only had. Well, I seem to remember Icke had 600,000 followers on Facebook before he got banned, was it? Or when I followed him, he had 600,000. That's not a massive number when you are the sort of like top of the tree.
Yeah.
So it was like a very small community, weren't it? Like you said, you probably thought, Christ, we're in that number. Yeah. Whatever that number is. But now I think, I mean, well, we've experienced it when we went to London in the protest. Yeah. There was 1 million people there that day, just in one city. That's in one country.
Well, for me, that was one of the reasons why I had such a smile on my face that day, was because of that fact. Because it was just so overpowering to me to think back at those earlier days when we were all kind of on our own. We hadn't even buddied up with anyone. There was no one in my personal life I could talk to, and there was probably one or two people in the world that I felt like I could open up to and talk to. Whereas now, I mean, there's just no similarity anymore. It's completely different beast, isn't it? And especially over this last 2 years, I think it's just gone on overdrive.
Yeah, so
maybe there was 150,000 organic souls sent down to spread the word, teach the others who spread the word.
We're sparking them off.
Yeah, and it's a recruitment drive over the past, I don't know, 50 or 60 years. Because when you really think about it, and I have tried to really think about this, because I'm a great believer in reincarnation. I think we've all been here before. It just depends whether you can recall what you were here before doing. And I think a lot of people ride on the coattails of others, and they want to say that they were some Egyptian king. Everybody who claims it, they always say that they were somebody of great importance. They never say that they were run-of-the-mill people. And my own experiences are of being a run-of-the-mill person, not a king or a queen or whatever. But when you are given the choice to go and live a life somewhere, you must at the time be aware that you will lose memory of everything. You will have to relearn everything. You will have to relearn how to talk. You will have to relearn how to learn. You'll have to relearn how to walk, how to move your hands. Everything is all new because you're tiny, and so you've got you come out as a baby, don't you? So you've got to relearn. It just depends how quick you can remember where you came from or what you're here for.
I don't think it's a coincidence that when babies are born, nearly every single one of them scream and cry their fucking eyes out for ages as soon as they come out. my little girl came out, and she cried for about 3 days, non-stop, screamed the war down in the hospital. I remember her face. It was such a powerful experience with that in mind. I was sitting there looking at it, bawling my eyes out myself, thinking, oh my God, how massive it was. But that was something that did cross my mind at the time. I was thinking, God, that the beauty and that's how amazing it is. Is that why? Is that why they're screaming? It's like, oh shit, what have I done?
Yeah, but sometimes it's not a complete reset though, Baz, because these little kids, you'll put them in front of a piano at 3 years old, and they'll just play it, or put a guitar in their hands, and they'll just play
I think it depends what family you're. Yeah, if you're born into a family that aren't that way inclined, if you're born into a family of people who sit and watch TV all day, then they're going to plonk you in front of a TV all day, and you're not going to learn anything. You're going to go down the same path that they're going down.
Did you boys ever see that documentary years and years ago? And it was actually one of the earlier ones that kind of sparked my thinking on all this. The Indian, was he from Pakistan or somewhere like that? Do you remember it? And the guy, he was a young boy. He was born, and he kept telling his parents that he was shot dead in his past life in another village. And there's been a lot of these recorded. And the young boy
as well.
Yeah, and this boy actually told his parents what his full name was, what village he lived in, and he actually named the killer. Said he was shot in the side of the head. Anyway, the boy was so adamant over quite a long period of time. He took him to this town, to this place where he'd mentioned it was a real town. He got there. His real name, the guy previous, who he would have been previous, was a real person living in that exact address. And he even told them where he was shot in the head, so he shaved his hair off, and he had 2 scars right in exactly the same place where the bullet would have went in. He then named the killer, and he went and confronted the guy who was still living, and the guy looked like he'd seen a ghost. He described them to a T and everything. And there's been loads of cases like that. Past life memory. You know, and it wasn't vague. It was to the T.
Yeah, there's that's a whole nother subject, all that stuff, isn't it?
But yeah, going back to the not enough bodies for souls. I think when you factor all that in, that could well be a thing. It makes a lot of sense, doesn't it, when you look around the world at people and you read people and watch them.
I mean, if you think, right, I mean, when we were kids, there was about 3 billion people on the planet.
Yeah, more than doubled in 40, 50
4 billion,
years.
so it's doubled in our lifetime.
Yeah.
So if all these souls are genuine, are real souls, where they all come, they must be, unless they're just constantly getting regenerated, but they must be coming from elsewhere, mustn't they? Because unless you can live 2 lives at the same time, is that possible, do you think? Are we living another, is our soul, you know, living another existence somewhere else? I've never even thought of that. That's just come to me.
That goes into
talking. Total different thing there. Because you end up talking about different planes. You end up talking about different, not realities as such, but we can only see a very limited range of the color structure, and we can only hear a very limited range of sounds.
Certain frequencies.
There's nothing to say that we're not sharing this space with others. We can't see them. They might not be able to see us, or they might be able to see us, but we can't, because we can only see so much.
Well, that would explain dreams as well, if you think about the dream time when you're asleep.
Well, it's like Wi-Fi. I mean, it's all around us, isn't it? We just don't see it, but it's all there. It's like a soup. And then, like you say, I mean, the paranormal. I mean, I've got loads of experience with that. I mean, my whole childhood was literally, the whole childhood was surrounded by it. I could go on and on for hours about things, what's happened. So I've got absolutely no doubt that you know, that stuff goes on and is real. And I think that's got to be what you just said there, Baz. It's like there's two worlds or 2 existences happening in the same place at the same time, but we can't see that one. But can they see our one? Are they living them? You know, is their existence like part of ours? They can see us, but we can't see them. And then you could just go on and on, couldn't you?
Well, that goes into the whole idea of why they've called it the universe. It was to throw people away from the fact that we're living in a multiverse.
You
know,
this is deep now, boys. We're
really at the end of the day. At the end of the day,
this could turn into a 5-hour one at this rate.
we're electromagnetic beings, aren't we? Fundamentally. So you know, and people don't, and like again, people don't even know that. So when you think of yourself as an electromagnetic,
they should know that, because there's things pointing at it. You know, cells in the body, electrical cells, positives, negatives. You know, the wordings, it's all there to tell you.
Yeah.
Total random little thing here, which sort of touches on what you just said there, Baz. Always remember when I was researching natural health and the debate about sugar causes or feeds cancer cells, right? Now, the question was, how come sugar in fruit does not feed? And the answer to that is that spins the other way. The cell spins round the other way.
It's fructose. It's a totally different sugar. It's a natural one.
So like processed sugar, it will suck it up, whereas natural sugars, good sugars, that because of spinning the other way, and obviously that's magnetic force.
Yeah.
That repels it, and it actually works in a good way. You know,
Well,
it gives
our bodies
energy to the immune system rather than
exactly, Larry.
the cancer cell.
Our bodies are made up, do you reckon, of around about 7 trillion cells, and the fact that it's called a cell isn't a coincidence, is it?
Yeah.
If you imagine it like a battery cell. So if you imagine we're made up of like 7 trillion nanoparticle cells, tiny cells on like an atomic level. Well, they're all our mini batteries, and you can either have them fully switched on or you can all have them all fully switched off. Now, if you eat predominantly fruit, you're taking in all of that natural energy from the fruit, which is mainly fructose, which is that natural sugar, and that actually lights us up on a cellular level. That's what it does, and that's where your natural healing comes from. But if you're eating like processed foods and you're doing all the wrong things, you're effectively switching off all your cells. So you're a dead battery. I think once you switch yourself off and you're a dead battery, you lose your soul then as well. Does there come a point, like, can the physical affect you on a spiritual level? I think they do, because they're like kind of symbiotic, aren't they? I know it's only a meat suit, but at the same time, they must affect each other and cross each other. So if your batteries are switched off through bad diet and all kinds of other things, would you be more inclined
one needs
to
the other, doesn't it? I don't think one can exist without the other, can it? I don't think your soul can exist without the duality, meat suit, and your meat suit can't exist without your soul.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, isn't it?
It's a massive subject. Yeah,
I mean, it's no coincidence that they've been attacking us on that level. Obviously, they're doing that for a reason, not just to cut our lives short. But I wouldn't be surprised if you looked into what we're talking about, us being electromagnetic beings, and we're fired up by cells. If they're switched off, there comes a point in your life where you just, you've gone backwards. Does your soul switch off as well?
Yeah,
it's interesting, eh?
It is.
One thing I wanted to mention, boys, I'm going to flip the subject here completely. Just wanted to go back. We were talking about the psychological aspects of people and how they read people, the behavioural scientists and stuff like that. And I think they've got to a point where they felt like they could pull this off. One thing that came up, and I thought it was interesting, was in terms of how they test us and how they read us. Do you remember the ice bucket challenge?
Yeah.
Remember the ice bucket challenge that happened a year or two before? Was it the year before all this started? Was it 2019? I think it was.
Long before that, I think, Billy.
Just for one example, I think that was rolled out, and it was one of the things where how they can read people, like a kind of test run for the scamdemic, based on peer pressure and using it as a template of conformity in groups, like the hive mind. They do it in all different ways, but that's something I've seen it on the internet, and it just kind of hit me, where they could use something like that to read the people and just see how much conformity there is. Because they're like trends, aren't they? They seem to happen all the time.
Sheep.
These little weird things will pop up, and everyone and his dog will seem to jump on it and have to do it because everybody else is.
Yeah.
And I think they use those type of things.
Like sheep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You don't want to be the odd one out.
Unless you're an old soul.
Yeah. It's a hive mind. Keep everyone in that thinking the same as everybody else.
Yeah.
People don't, obviously, a lot of people don't realise that they use these things as test beds to get a feel for how the people are, how many people are going to go along with the majority.
Well, I think because, social media is still quite new, weren't it? I think I joined Facebook in 2008. and that'd been around about 6 years then, hadn't it? I think that was developed in 2002 or 3. So it's still very infant, really, isn't it? Social media. And I think that ice bucket challenge, you're probably looking at about 7-8 years ago, I think, Billy.
Was it that long ago? Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
I don't think it is that long, is it?
You go on, Google it, have a look. I bet it was.
I didn't think it was that long ago.
I won't argue with you, Lazar, because I know you've got a punch on for dates and times. You're always bang on.
I bet it was around 2013, 14, something like that. If it weren't the ice bucket, it was that drinking game, that one where
2014.
Yeah, you're right again.
I'm shit hot on dates.
But you know, I bet you if you went back, there was probably 1 or 2 a year that you could put into that bracket, things that you use.
Yeah, they done the drinking game and all, didn't they? Where you had to down a pint or an alcoholic drink. Because I done it. So that's how I remember how long ago it was, because I did do that drinking one.
They're like black magic spells, aren't they? That they use.
And then you nominate 2 people or something, don't you? So that's like a bit like a pyramid, isn't it? The money pyramid scheme. So if you pull one person in, then they've got to pull 2 in, and it just naturally keep growing. So they've been doing them for all this time just to gauge how humans will behave online. So they knew if they could get people virtue signaling on social media, then that others would feel like they've got to follow it. And that is what's happened. It's like social media has been huge in all this. It's been massive. They would never have been able to done this without social media. No way. They just wouldn't have done it. I don't think people, if that had just gone out on the news every night, like if we'd have rewound back to the 80s, early 90s, and this would have just gone out on the news, I think it just fell flat on the face. People wouldn't have, they'd have gone into work next day and said, I ain't doing that. I ain't bloody stopping work. No, I ain't doing that. And that had never gone anywhere. But because social media, it was almost like the glue that brought it all together and just cemented it all and allowed them to keep adding bit more in. 2 weeks to flatten the curve, then 3, then we just do another 3 weeks, and then that's what's happened. And then they just keep adding it in, and people on social media, and it's just like self-generating sort of thing. And that's got us to where we are now. And you're right, it all stems back to them little tests they were doing, like, 2013, 14, whenever it was. But I'm not sure if the ice bucket challenge came after that drinking one. I reckon that come after. I think there was a drinking one before that. I'm not sure. They were around about the same time, but that don't really matter anyway. But it's all the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it just shows.
I mean, who's got let's get people get a bucket of ice cold water and shove it over their heads. If they'll do that, they'd pretty much do anything. I mean, they had to be something that weren't got they couldn't ask them to set fire to the hair or anything like that. It had to be something sensible. But it did end up being like, let's eat some, what were they eating? Washing liquid bloody tablets, weren't they?
That was the other one. Yeah. That's another one. Yeah, there's another one.
I mean, they got them doing that. Well, if they're going to do that, they're going to follow literally anything, aren't they?
That's it. But people see all that as being an innocent bit of fun, but they don't realise that there's a big, brainwashing, psychological experiment going on over the years.
Maybe that was the indicator. Maybe that was the trigger for them to start doing what they've done. Maybe they all sat around the room and said, hey, do you know what? They started eating fucking dishwasher tablets.
Yeah.
No, let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah. They're ready.
That's it. I really do think that. I really do think when they have that, what's the yearly meeting they all have? I forget the name of it now.
The
Bilderberg group, is it?
Bilderberg, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah, and they all meet up every year in an undisclosed location.
They cancelled it this year, didn't they, or last year?
Which is a funny thing, isn't it? But
yeah,
I really do think that's
private or something.
Yeah, I think they sit there and they go, look at these absolute clowns. We've got them eating dishwasher tablets, pouring buckets of water over their head because everybody else is doing it. The time's right. Fire up the scamdemic.
Yeah,
and obviously we know that they've had little test beds of small mini scamdemic that they've tried to pull as well, coupled to that, haven't they? Going back to
nearly every single year.
The swine flu, they tried it, didn't they? 2009.
Just keep pushing it into people's psyche slowly, ready for the big one.
Still video clips, isn't there, about that swine flu? There's still video clips because thousands of people. No, it weren't thousands. Was it just 100 or so people that died from the jab?
That's the one. That was 1975 or 6.
Is that the one right? Okay.
But
that was swine flu, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was swine flu, and I think that was 75 or 76 in America. I think it was something like 22 people died, and they pulled it. They pulled the vaccine, and then a further I think there was about 52 people died in total, but they actually pulled it after about 25, something like that. People died. They said, "No, stop this. People are dying," and then a further another 25 died or whatever it was. And that was all. I
guess then, though, they didn't have the control levels that they've got now, did they?
Well, the media was what pulled it up. They were reporting the deaths. They were they were doing what they should do. Yeah. And then that also happened in 2009 with the swine flu here. They were dishing the vaccine out, and people were getting what's that called? Narcolepsy or something. I can't think the name of it.
Narcolepsy, yeah, where you fall asleep.
Narcolepsy, yeah.
A
lot of people were getting that. The media done the job. They highlighted it, drew attention to it, investigated it, and they pulled it. So this time they made sure they had to get the media on side, shall we say?
It's like they're just dipping the toes in the bath, saying, it's a bit hot, run a bit more cold, and then when it's just right, they'll get in. It's like they've been doing that for years. Just let's have a little test. Let's just put a tester out there and see where they are. Oh, it's a little bit hot at the moment, but let's just cool it down a little bit, and then we'll go for it. I don't think it's come 2019. We're going to have to do something radical and end a lot of people. It's something that's been creeping along for quite a long time.
I think Bass was right when they started eating dishwasher tablets or whatever they were. That was it, weren't it? Like, bloody hell, have you seen what they're doing now? Come on, boys, we've got to fast forward this Agenda 21.
Yeah.
Look, they're ready. Yeah. They're ready. Let's do it. That was one. It has got to be that. I mean, Christ almighty. I mean, to be honest,
sounds crazy, but it's definitely.
Were they actually swallowing them? Because I can't say I ever really watched any of them. Were they actually eating them? Were they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bloody hell. Oof. Crazy.
Probably healthier than getting the rooster, though.
Well, probably.
It's like people probably don't realise that what they class as being the anti-vaccine movement, or the people who were against certain vaccines, goes back. Was it 1800s? Was the smallpox, and they brought out a vaccine at the time, and they made it mandatory that everybody had to have it. And people started having it, and then they realised that children were starting to die. They were dropping dead all over the place with these vaccines.
They created their own smallpox through the arm spear, going back then. Yeah.
Well, that ended up. It was Leicester, wasn't it? Leicester became the hub of it because they protested in there, hundreds of thousands in Leicester. And they actually got the mandate overturned purely because of this. And that's why when people say, "Yeah, well, just go ahead with it," what if they hadn't gone ahead with that? What if everybody had just rolled up the sleeves and had the jabs then? Would we all be here now?
We'd all have a
not.
right shit immune system, I know that, at best.
But that stopped it all happening then. So they've done this for years. It's not just decades, it's centuries that they've been trying to do this.
This is why I think maybe we got to a point where they've achieved what they want to achieve.
Yeah.
And now we'll go back to some sort of normal. I really do think this is possible.
As we know, boys.
This other stuff. Go
on. Sorry, go on, mate.
No, you're all right. Carry on.
I was just going to say, as we know, the world's run by psychopaths, and we've had our fair share of that, haven't we? We know enough about psychopaths and how they operate.
Yeah.
So, and one thing we do know about them is they're always an opportunist type. They'll take any opportunity that comes their way if they think they can get away with it. Won't they? That's how they operate. It's like on the fly opportunism. They're not very clever. They're just very deceitful and good at being manipulative and picking an opportunity when it comes along. And I think that's why all those names that I read out earlier on, all these so-called leaders, have been placed in as well, because they're prime psychopaths that the ones above them know if you give them the opportunity, they'll hang themselves because they can't help themselves. That it's the way they are. They know how they work as well as us. And I think that's what they've done, is say, we'll just sacrifice these idiots and let them do all our dirty work to achieve our end goal, which is to drive the population right back down again.
Yeah. I mean, we have had this conversation privately, but I'm personally, I don't think that keeping the human population numbers down is a bad thing. I disagree with how they're doing it, but common sense tell you if human beings are going to keep doubling. I mean, like I said earlier, when we were kids in the 80s, the world's population, I think it was something like 3.5 billion or 4 billion. It's now doubled in like 40 years.
We've sorry to interrupt, we've only got their word for that.
Oh yeah.
If you go online and you go into Google and say what's the world's population, it'll tell you. If you go onto another site, there's a counter that tells you. But it's it's an automated number that just keeps increasing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a question mark if
they don't. There's lots of parts of the world where
if that number is
they don't
true.
know how many people live there. They've no idea. In Africa, I'm sure places like Kazakhstan, that's one of the biggest countries in the world. I'm sure they don't know how many people live there either.
I'm looking at
if you say there's billions in China, you go out into the sticks in China, they're not all under the control of the Chinese governments. We just don't know. We're just taking their word for it. That there's 7 or so billion people here.
You'd like to think that they're getting that number from registered people living on the planet.
They're not. I don't think they are. I don't think they are. I think it's just a number they've estimated, and it's a bit like
Neil Ferguson.
Yeah, it's exactly.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It is.
They use this and this
data analytics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they multiply it by 79,000, divided by 43, and that's about it.
Right. Yeah. Okay, Baz, I hear what you're saying.
Taking all things into consideration.
So the only way we can really know if numbers are really doubling, like in 40 years, is by seeing it with our own eyes. So what we've got to ask ourselves is, right, we're all got where we live, towns, villages, whatever. Have them towns and villages increased in population size with our own eyes? And you can tell that by, are there twice as many houses where you live than there was when you were a kid? Are they all?
I actually don't think that's the not the crux of it. I don't think, because when I worked in Africa, we flew from Paris to Angola, and we flew over a lot of Africa, and it was at night when we flew over, and there was barely any lights when we flew all of that landmass, because I was really interested. I was leaning not out of the window, but I was leaning, turning my neck around to be able to see, because I wanted to see another continent that I was flying over, and we barely saw anything, not hardly any lights down there. So, and that's one of the biggest land masses in the world.
Yeah.
So if it's going to be, you probably look at the population of Africa. I don't know what it is. I've not looked, but surely you'd see. I know the deserts are a little bit different.
I don't know if the population of Africa is that big, is it? I mean, South Africa's a massive country, and it's fairly big, South Africa. And I think the population of that is about the same as ours. It's about 60 million, I think.
That seems to be the problem now, doesn't it?
1.2 billion people live in Africa. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, in Africa. Right, okay. But what I'm getting at, Baz, all right, we can't really gauge what's going on in the rest of the world, but I think we can say in our country, the numbers have gone up. I mean, there was 50 million, I remember it, 50 million people lived in the UK when we were at school in the 80s. That's 50 million. It's now 60, about 66, 67 million. So it's gone up about 30%. About 30% has gone up.
Yeah.
So, and I can see that with my eyes, it's gone up by that much, because the town I live in has definitely increased in size, like houses, number of people. So what I'm saying is, if we was for thousands of years to continue letting humans just keep increasing in size, at some point it is going to become a problem. I know that we are nowhere near that point yet, but you can sort of see if there is people running the show, that they are having to make sure that they don't let that ever get to that point. Now, again, I disagree with how they're going about it. I'm totally against how they're going about it. And really, they should just be honest with us and say, look, we have got to be responsible. We can't just breed willy-nilly. And they've got to put things in place to stop encouraging people to breed. Because in this country, a lot, not being funny, but that's almost like reward to bang the kids out in it.
Have 15 kids and you'll be all right.
Yeah. Nice big house. Fucking loads of money some of these get. It's ridiculous. New cars. It's madness. That should all stop. There should be, you get this much money, no matter how many kids you got. It's your choice. You don't have to keep producing kids. And it needs to be done over the course of a couple of centuries to knock the numbers back down and then manage them. But how they're gone about this is just totally wrong. And I'm obviously dead against how they've done it. But in the grand scheme of things, for me, I do think the world would be a better place if there was less humans in it, because I don't just look at it from my point of view. I look at it from an animal's point of view. I mean, you imagine from their point of view, we're destroying their forests they live in. Do you know what I mean? We're just putting concrete everywhere.
Driving them all out of the natural habitat.
From a gorilla's point of view or whatever. You know, all these bushfires and stuff. I'll just double check something, because I heard this, you probably heard it years ago as well. So it was something to do with the population, the world's population, and Australia. And I've just double checked. I've just done a bit of a search on it there. Australia's was 15 million in the 80s. I think. No, but what he was saying about the world's population and the land mass of Australia, and it was something to do with you could fit the world's population in the land mass of Australia. And I thought, let me just double check on that. And I've just found a post here that says, if you were to assume each person would take up 1 square metre of space, then the world's population packed together would take up something like 7,400 square kilometres. Australia, with a landmass just shy of 7.7 million square kilometres, is over 1,000 times larger.
Yeah, I remember hearing the same about Texas, the state of Texas.
Yeah, if you picked everybody up and dropped them into Australia, you'd be able to give each person, if I've read that right,
piece of land. Yeah.
Yeah, 1,000 square kilometres.
Fucking hell, yeah.
Yeah, but it ain't just about space, though, is it? Look at the problems we've got.
Yeah,
because
you're getting
so
down
many
to
people.
Big business, then, aren't you?
It's not just about space.
If big businesses were taken away and it was given to smaller independent businesses on a local scale, there would be enough employment for everybody. But because these big corporations are automating things and centralizing things, that takes it all away. If you got rid of all of that, this world could survive and look after each other.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We definitely could. If we all agreed, right, we'll keep the number as it is, no problem.
Yeah.
But we're not. We're going to keep breeding and increasing. And over the course of thousands of years, it would become a problem.
I think we're tribal by nature as well, aren't we? You know what I mean? Even going back thousands of years, by nature, we're a tribal, we huddle together in packs, don't we? On a tribal basis. So, you know, I don't think the human race would ever live like that. You know, evenly spaced out around the world, that type of thing. It comes down to, like, you know, supplies and stuff like that. You know, you have people that tend to huddle in one certain spot on the map for, like, fishing and agriculture and stuff like that. And they kind of work better in tribes and in groups, rather than, like, being evenly dispersed across a land.
Yeah. I mean, you got to also think about what would the number be. Imagine if human beings are all lovable characters and we all got on with each other, and there was never any murders, there was no wars, nobody ever died other than natural deaths. I wonder what the human population would be now. What do you reckon?
Yeah.
I have no idea. What do you reckon? Would it be double? How many? I mean, the wars. I mean, you think history, even kids taught at school, it's all wars, isn't it? All them people getting killed. And then you got to remember, them people who got killed, then, like, young men, so they're now not going to breed. Whereas if they'd have stayed alive, they would have bred. And I think the population of the human population right now, if we were all like benevolent race, where we didn't have a bad bone in our bodies, that could well be like 50 billion by now. Do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I mean, that's just a guess, but
there'd be knock-on effects, like you say, though, Larry. There'd be knock-on effects to that, wouldn't they? In regards to balance in nature, like, we probably have no animals left by now if that was the case.
And again, getting back to what Baz said, I mean, when they give us the amount of people who have died in these wars, we're just you know, we can't ever know if they're being honest about that. That might be a lot more than what they've said. You know, I mean, how many people died in World War II? There could have been loads more died in World War II than they've told us. We don't know, do we? How would we ever know?
Yeah, it's funny that they started the census at the very beginning of World War I, wasn't it, as well? Wasn't it 1913 where they started the census, where they started actually recording people? I'm sure it was 1913. Just before the wars kicked off.
I think it was around that time. I think it was around that time, I think.
And taxation came in then as well, at the same time, which we know was all
that was a World War One thing, wasn't it? It was a war tax, which is just going to fund the war, but then they carried it on afterwards.
Is that so? Is that? What do you think of the idea of that? Is that's what they do? They'll kind of let the census go over a certain period when it suits them, and then when they want to start counting the people again, they'll do that. Maybe there's something like that coming again. You know, because we know that they do it in, like, they kind of try and reset things every so often in history. Would that be for a reason, do you think?
It's an interesting subject. It's a shame Stevie weren't involved in this one, because this is really interesting. This is, I think.
It is something we can carry on at another time, though, isn't it?
Yeah, we could really dig into this, because
I'd like to have got
numbers.
Stevie's take on all this, because we don't really talk about this privately, do we? This sort of stuff.
No.
Because you could literally branch off anywhere and think, oh, what about this? What about that? Which can paint a different picture. Like I just said, what if if we didn't have all these wars, what the hell would the number be now? Who knows? Are all these wars just generated for that sole reason? Is that the only purpose of them?
Yeah, we know that these secret unknowns, if you want to call them that, they know a hell of a lot more than we do around all that kind of stuff. And when you've got the likes of, well, most of them are eugenicists anyway, aren't they? They believe in depopulation. And then you've got the likes of Prince Philip, for instance, coming out saying, when he was asked if he was to reincarnate, what would he choose? And he said a deadly bacterial infection, virus that would wipe out half the planet, or the majority of the planet. And he said that, and then obviously he went just before all this started, didn't he, or just after it begun? Is that right?
When did 2020? Did he?
Yeah, it was. It was around that time. I remember it being pretty coincidental, like.
Can't think.
It
was it last year?
I think it was when the jib jab started. I think it was around the time the jib jab started, and then that story came out that he was, and I just remember it being pretty coincidental, based on what his beliefs were, and he made it so public. Yeah, and it means crown, doesn't it? Corona. That's the meaning of the word corona, is crown, which I found interesting as well. I just remember it standing out to me at the time.
Corona, isn't that what the old fizzy drink used to be called?
It did, yeah.
Remember that, Bazza?
Corona. Oh yeah,
Corona. They used to come round it with a van, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, yeah. And a kind of top deck shandy.
Oh yeah, and you used to give the bottles.
Send you a pissed.
You get 10p deposit, wouldn't you? Yeah, on the bottle. If you handed them back at the empty bottle.
Used to get a can of lager and lime, top deck, sit on the wall outside our house, swig it all down in one, and pretend I was pissed.
Oh dear, lad. Yeah. They were the days, eh? Long gone.
Oh, they were, mate. The candy floss man had come round.
Did they?
Yeah. We used to have a candy floss. Didn't you have one of them, no? We used to have a candy floss.
He lives near Seed, only, so maybe they did.
No, well, no, we had candy floss, but they wouldn't come round in a van.
No, I know, same here.
The only time you get it was like at a fairground or.
So that's not one of your dreams, Billy?
No, he was actually he was actually a relation of mine, so I used to be made up when he'd come into the street, because my our fella was always tight as a matador's kecks. And if you'd asked him for a pound or something for the ice cream van, he'd fuck you off. But because my Uncle Jimmy used to come round in the candy floss van, about 20 of us had all lined up for free candy flosses. Yeah. Looked like Father Christmas, he did.
I've never heard that. Never heard that.
Weird up here, mate.
Makes sense, though. Gap in the market and all that. No one else is doing it. Kids love a candy floss. Oh, yeah.
Right, boys, are we going to wind this up?
Yeah.
So we've got an hour and 3/4 nearly, I think, something now.
Yeah, definitely wind it up, and it's been good.
Yeah.
Good chat, boys.
Yeah, I enjoyed talking about what we've talked about today. It's been good.
Hopefully we can get Stevie on next time. We're overdue the full team on at once, aren't we?
Yeah, we definitely want a full squad.
We'll work it around that next time.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
emotional again, though, boys.
Yeah, thanks everybody for listening.
Yes, thanks for listening, guys and girls.
We'll catch you soon.
Yeah, I'm off for a candy floss. Take it easy.
Top deck.
Yeah.
Bye.
See you later, guys.
Take it easy.
Thanks for listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe.